Hello, everybody. Welcome to Better Together. When you know better, you get better. It is Tuesday, January 5th, 2021. Our quote of the day: the best way to overcome fear isn't to act tougher. The best way to overcome fear is to be vulnerable, to be known. That's from our guest today, Rachel Cruz, the author of the new book, Know Yourself, Know Your Money. It is out today. We're going to be chatting with her today about our money personalities, and we're going to figure out which traits to emphasize and which traits to scale back as we set ourselves up for a financially fit 2021. It's going to be a fun conversation, I am anticipating, because I'm anticipating what all of us are and how funny that's going to be.
I'm nervous, Maria.
I know mine was right on the money, and I'm sure Kevin, if he was honest, his will be right on the money. I can't wait for that discussion. In the meantime, before we get into it, it's funny because our guest, Rachel, is from Nashville. And I had this epiphany, or this moment recently, where a friend of mine came by, socially distanced, and was like, I was in Nashville recently and it's amazing. She's like, it's like such a community.
Having been here so long, and I've had even my mentors tell me this, you are so focused on your career, and your career is the most competitive literally in the world. It's the most competitive business in the world. And then if you don't have, first of all, if you have children, you see how disastrous that can be in Hollywood. But then when you don't have children, you're just even more laser focused. And then the weather. You know, it's like the pandemic forced everyone to be in, forced people to be closer. I think in a good way. I know disastrous in other ways, but good way. But here it was, I'm just going to go down the beach. I'm going to go hike. There's just.
It's all about you.
That's right. And over time, it just all becomes about you. And I urge your fans in LA, who especially younger, to check yourself. We purposely rescued many, many dogs. And we at one point had 6 with our team, and they almost made it to 20. But I remember, again, being the elder in the relationship, saying, we're going to do this so we really check ourselves not to become like that. And then AfterBuzz, our network, the host became our children, and we had Thanksgiving and big Christmases for the kids that couldn't afford to go home. But we really had to work at it. And I still have to work at it, Maria. And you do too. So I just want to preface it, like, we had wonderful people step up for us, and please, because I don't want to hurt their feelings, but we don't have a sense of community here that, like when Jeff went home and had slow coffee and everyone was tobogganing, and Jeff's told me about his childhood and his teenage years.
We have none of that here.
Where there's a community and like the
Thank
parenting
you for the clarifying,
okay.
Because I feel like I've spent a lot of time talking and revering all the amazing people who did step up. But my point is like, they helped them with the meal train. Like listen, well, I'll give you an example. So like, we have a really tight knit, like, little neighborhood. So we love our neighbors. We've always had a lot of fun with everybody. One of my neighbors, who is very, he is what he is. I love him, but he's immature and whatever. And his wife knows I'm drowning, right? Because she's sweet. She's checked in with me. And he's texting me, asking me if someone from our camp parked in front of his house. And I'm like, I want to friggin' kill you. I can't even respond to you. I had a cousin in the middle of all of this who knows what we're dealing with. Hey, Olympic Pizza wants an autograph from you.
By the way, here's the thing though, guys. Comedy must rule. When people get so ridiculous, you just gotta laugh. It's just hilarious.
So I'm sitting here like Nashville is doing meal trains for someone who did like a normal thing. They had a baby. When it's not normal and you have 2 parents that are on the verge of death every friggin' minute in your home, that, by the way, yes, is, in the middle of construction and just a shit show. And that's what you're getting. You're like, wait, what?
But let me tell you about my people in the neighborhood. My people decided to crank the music to all levels. Awesome club party music. Put a bull, a mechanical bull in the backyard for New Year's Eve. And you know what? We went over there for iced vodka, and it was phenomenal to see. So to me, they did their part.
Listen, and like I said,
Why are you
I've
laughing?
spoken about this on the show many times. If you have one or two amazing friends that come through for you, then you're really blessed. And I did. Between obviously Kelsey is like a whole other level, and Dimitri and Marcy who really came through. And then there were the outer skirts of people like Lauren who sent lunch, Roxy sent some juices.
I mean, Ashley
some
was
of
on
our
the phone every
afterbuzzers.
day.
Ashley was praying. I would call Ashley and be like, "Will you pray with me?" So we did have a lot of amazing friends, but there's not that like community. Like if Kelsey wasn't here, I would literally have just died because you physically need somebody there sometimes. And so that prompted the idea of moving to Nashville. And so we are definitely entertaining this, by the way, because there is an entertainment community there. It is beautiful. We are going to have a family. We want to raise them somewhere where there will be like kids next door to play with, and you're not afraid. It's just like LA is just, I don't know.
It
doesn't
LA
have
is
that.
just so it's not conducive to what you want right now. I mean, like, and you could maybe make changes here so that it would be more that way, but I think you've hit the nail on the head that sense of community, it's this really widespread kind of lonely city,
It really is.
I'm biased. I love LA.
But you're in a different season.
I think that's true.
Yeah, but as a young-
Roxy and I.
Okay, you're in your 20s.
Right.
Listen, this is your time. It's probably the most narcissistic period of your life post high school, college. Okay, but as time goes on, you hopefully
Yes.
grow, and now all of a sudden your
Yeah.
parents become your worries, and then your children. And
Yeah.
But no, if you're pursuing, like I think Jeff said it best, it's about your needs. For a young person, I think travel anywhere outside of your hometown, Chicago, LA, New York, maybe not New York right now, but I think any of those, do it, and more power to you. But what we're saying is, for family and for those kind of things. And by the way, I can't tell you, Maria, even before the pandemic, it was always kind of a thing, at least for East Coasters, where they would come out here, make it, move back home.
Yeah.
A lot of guys I know were writers. They made it, and then it was always the goal is to get back to New York to be with friends and family that they grew up with.
I will say, I feel like it's a lonely city when it comes to people who are, I guess, community, right? So it's like I often find like I have one, and we've talked about this on the show before, Jeff. You said that all your closest friends aren't in the industry. And I can say the same, like my closest friend's a nurse, right? So they have a different mentality. But if you're running in the circle of only entertainment people, then I think it is lonely because they're not thinking about anyone but themselves. Right.
Yeah.
So,
well, and Kevin's always talked about this too. Like like my friend Harula came over and we were having this discussion, and she and Kevin are very like intense about the business. And I'm like, I don't want to just talk about the business. And I never have.
Well, it tends about the art.
The art. Yeah,
We're not
yeah.
so much the business. We're about the art.
Yeah, but I feel like I, especially in the kid phase of our lives, want something different.
And so do I. Now I do, because I'm in the kid phase too.
And we entertained the idea of Connecticut, but then after being there and going to visit like the area that we wanted to live in, I'm like, gosh, it's going to be so freaking cold out here, and maybe too close to some family members we don't want to be too close to. Anyway, I think Nashville might be Mama Bear's bed. So putting
is
it out
Nashville
there.
warm?
Yes. Nashville is the perfect place. It's got 4 seasons, but none of them are extreme. Winter ends in like February, apparently, and then spring starts. Guys, it's going to be amazing. We're all going to move to Nashville. So
I love it.
Kelsey, you know what? No, LA is fine, for you as a young person. And I want to say that, because I understand, I mean, I get it. And also, Maria, like, I always say this too, to caution your listeners who are in their 20s, and let's say I know you have a lot of aspiring hosts and actors who listen to you, and I always say to skew your perspective on how you feel about the art and the business, because I always add, says the person hosting Entertainment Tonight at 22, which no one's ever done again. Meaning, every dream, I mean, I know that might have been not your dream that you went to bed thinking about, but I mean, you've accomplished, you've conquered so much. I get it, where you're just like, what's next? But for other people that have that burning desire, I
can only do
understand.
it because I had all that success, and now I'm building something different that can be done anywhere.
Exactly.
So,
And by the way, that also side note, that's a little like inside baseball in terms of our business, I think you can do our business anywhere now. I really do. I do not think it's predicated on LA anymore due to technology and the way things are going.
All right, guys. New year, new you. And at Dunkin', new brews. Okay, so you know that Better Together is powered by Dunkin'. So today we're exploring 3 new exciting coffee choices that are available for you at Dunkin's. Kev, you can tell us which one you would try. I have the Dunkin' Explorer batch, and it's a globally sourced smoky dark berry noted blend. I will say at first it's pretty bold, and then it really connects. And so like, I'm not somebody that really loves like super strong coffee generally. And so the regular brew at Dunkin' is my favorite. But what's funny is this is really, really grown on me as I've sipped on. I'm like, oh, I like this. Like, I am that kind of person. It takes me a minute to warm up to stuff. So whenever I would try on a pair of jeans, I'm like, oh, I don't like these. And then I'm like, kind of like them. Oh, I love these. Oh my God, I freaking love these. And that's how like my normal process goes. And I'm kind of there with my Dunkin' Explorer batch. Jeff, I know you're trying the Midnight Blend.
Yes, I'm drinking the Midnight Blend, and I would say it's similarly bold. It's kind of that dark. The thing I love is there's like these very subtle hints of chocolate. But again, Dunkin' has this way of giving you these high-class luxury coffees at a price you can afford. And you know what? Today's a financial responsibility show. There are some other brands that maybe I won't mention by name, but all of us know that Dunkin' is the better option when it comes to finances if you're going to get your coffee.
By the way, they have almond milk.
Yep.
Oh, drop the mic. I heard
Drop the mic.
I heard that those other places have all kinds of shortages and have nothing available for anybody. But at Dunkin', they've got everything you need. But yeah, I think it is. It's gourmet, and it's fiscally responsible, and it still has the smoothness that I really, really love about Dunkin'. So as I taste this like kind of darker blend, I really love it. So I think we should try it.
I have to say, I think both of these brands are perfectly suited for a little slow coffee. And I don't know how you feel, but I think these are perfect for slow sipping.
Jeff, so I've always wanted to be the Dunkin' Donut girl, like, you know, the time to make the donuts man, but I'm kind of nervous they're going to listen to this and they're going to make you the slow coffee man. And if you take my place,
Truly,
I might put a hit out on you.
It'll be a tag team, Maria.
Yeah,
Better together.
like
Better together.
waterboarding him with like coffee or something. But I think it's so delicious. Like I really, really love it. And at first I was like, ooh, this is different. But that's the whole point, right? Dunkin's all coming at you from all angles. They're like, hey, you can do the toasted coconut iced coffee, or guess what? You got these new brews. So they're always coming up with something new. And that's why I love them, because, you know, you want new things to try. My dad is always going to drink his black coffee with a few ice cubes in it. He was very appreciative.
Oh, I'm so
Kelsey.
glad.
But I have to say, I'm really digging the Explorer batch.
And we'll just quickly mention the third new blend this year is the Dunkin' Extra Charged. Dunkin' has really nailed their Nitro, which we had last year. It's crazy to say last year, but
I know.
for that bolder, more caffeinated option, they really keep it subtle. So the Extra Charge is amazing as well. Definitely check it out.
I love it. Well, Better Together runs on Dunkin', and you should too. All right, let's get to our interview with Miss Rachel Cruz. Rachel Cruz is a national expert on the topic of finance and budgeting, a Ramsey personality, and a #1 New York Times bestselling author. She's known for practical and actionable advice around money. Aside from being a Women's Day magazine contributor, she's appeared on GMA, Live with Kelly and Ryan, The Today Show. Her new book, Know Yourself, Know Your Money, will help us diagnose our money personality so we can set ourselves straight for 2021. Rachel, thank you for being back with us here.
Thank you, Maria. Thanks for having me back on.
Well, we're excited because, you know, it's a new year and everyone wants to start the new year right in many categories, and financially, of course, being probably, aside from our health, one of the most important. So I think you're doing us such a service with this book, because knowing who you are is so important to get to where you want to go in every aspect of life. But I've never heard anybody really talk about it in the financial kind of way. So it was great. And then we all took the quiz here to know our money personality. And I think maybe we probably start with that because let's just get right to it. So Jeff has all of our results. He knows what we've all, tested out to be. And the game is on. So, Kevin, are you here with us?
I am here.
Oh, Kevin is so
Kevin
depressed.
is nervous.
I can't wait.
All right, Rachel, I will start with our queen, of course, Maria Menounos. She was diagnosed with a strong safety-focused mindset, a strong scarcity mentality, and she's billed as an extreme saver. And as you get to know a bit of both how Kevin and Maria grew up, I think it'll be a very interesting way to see how their classroom factors into their current money spending. But let me just keep going. I'll just give you all of
Hold
us.
on
In
one
fact,
second. So I like what you just said, Jeff, because the whole point of this, first of all, we'll have our fun shaming each other for our different things. But the whole point of this is we want to know who we are, why we became who we are, so that we can figure out using the strengths and the weaknesses and accordingly. So the money classroom is, I think, super interesting. So there are 4 money classrooms that you talk
Yes.
about. And it really is based on kind of what we grew up with, right?
That's right. Yeah. So your home growing up, you could say, was your classroom in every aspect of life. That's where you learned your lessons. And then you went out into adulthood and you decided, okay, these are lessons that I want to take with me. Here are some lessons I wish I could unlearn from my family. But you take those lessons with you. And depending on your money tendencies and your personality is how those lessons really affected you. But your childhood growing up, was that classroom. And it was a huge part of your money story today.
Okay, so Jeff, I'm an extreme saver, which I learned from my dad. And so now, Jeff, continue.
Again, the safety-focused minds. Oh, I'm going to move on to Kevin. Okay, so this is, of course, our listeners know, but if you're new to the show, this is Maria's husband. You guys, and business partner. And I think you guys have diametrically opposed philosophies with money. So I'm reading Kevin's results now. He is an extreme spender. So you're both on the extreme side. He also has a moderate scarcity mindset, which is interesting. So you kind of share that. And also a strong safety-focused mindset. So you share some things, but you completely diverge in your philosophy towards saving or spending.
I like to think that we complement each other, Rachel. And I like to think that he's more moderate scarcity because he grew up poor and then went to the rich town. He grew up in Medford and then went to Winchester. I just grew up poor and we kind of stayed there. So I never got to moderate. You know what I mean? We just were always scared for money.
Just
and we didn't.
Just extreme.
Yeah. So go ahead, Jeff.
Well, no, I love it because I'm like, okay, neither one's right or wrong, right? So the spender or the saver, it's not right or wrong. Now, if you do go to the extremes constantly, that can get a little unhealthy. You do want a little bit of moderation, if you will. But
yeah,
I lean way more on the spender side. My husband leans way more on the saver side. So you go down the list, and usually opposites attract. So that's good that some of your foundational principles, though, right, is similar. So I'm sure you see eye to eye, maybe on more things with money than other couples.
Not necessarily, but I think I can break it down to water. Okay, this is how I explain Kevin and I's relationship financially when it comes to water. I am like, water's free at home. He will go to 7-Eleven and buy the big, huge water bottles. He'll buy 3 of them. And I'm like, you're not going to drink 3 of them. It's going to end up in the car. Now we've wasted money. By the way, you would think I have nothing, no money. Like I'm a sick human being.
Okay, except he drinks all 3 of them. And then Maria somehow wakes up like, wait, how are you 54 years old and how did you pull off a 1.5-year renovation for, 3% of the budget of your high-end Hollywood contractor in a matter of 3.5 months, 7 days a week, 16 hours a day doing physical labor in the worst heat? How did that happen?
Because he had the 3 bottles of water.
Yeah, maybe because I drink
He was
about...
hydrated. He was hydrated.
No,
That's all
but
that matters.
I do whatever it takes to keep my body going, and that I do in lieu of the, hydrocolonics, let's say, that all the LA people get and all the money they spend on their stuff, I go the regular guy approach.
But here's the thing.
H2O.
I'm basically, Rachel, painting you the picture of the extremes. And
Yes,
what's
yes.
good is I would still have every penny I'd ever earned in the bank. But because of him, I've invested in my career, which actually is much smarter in the long run.
Yes.
But I would have been terrified because of the way I grew up. So we'll continue with the diagnoses. of
okay,
Jeff
so,
and Kelsey, and then you can share with us what you see and then how you would guide us to the next level.
So I'll start with my fabulous co-producer and partner in crime, Kelsey. Kelsey, I'll actually throw to you because you have your results in there.
Yes, I do. So, Rachel, I started to briefly tell this to you guys, and then we were going to save it for air because I know Maria is going to say, you're kidding. But here we go. I got extreme saver, moderate scarcity mindset, and strong safety focused mindset. So why Maria is going to disagree is because I am a consumer.
She's a huge consumer, Rachel. I have to be the one to tell the truth here. I'm just kidding. I lived with her for months, so I know this girl loves to shop.
And I do. I'm a consumer. I'm definitely a consumer, but I also was the kid who I worked since I was in 7th grade, and I always had a little piggy bank stuffed in hiding in my closet that I would put all of my cash in there.
Which is scarcity mindset for sure.
Yep.
Yes, that's fascinating.
No one in my family knew about it. My mom claimed she did. She didn't. She definitely did it. And I always have a hard time, like if I would get a wad or whatever, I couldn't spend it on anything. I was like, no, I need to save it. And I have a savings that I always put money into every month.
Which is super impressive. I feel like she's a really healthy balance probably.
I was going to say on the spender saver scale, yes, that's ideal right there, right? I'm a natural saver, but I've learned how to spend some money, how to enjoy life a little bit, but I'm not extreme. Whereas a spender for me, I can go too extreme and I could just be going. I mean, like I'm like, yeah, just cash out the 401k. We'll figure something out, right? I mean, not really, but like that would be my bent, which would be unhealthy. So my moderate is to say, no, I love to spend money. I have an easy time spending money. I don't have guilt or shame over it. I have a budget. I know what to spend. I'm good. But I've had to learn to save, and I do save. I save first before I spend. I mean, I've had to put things in place in my life. So again, it's the same idea that those extremes can get unhealthy, but that moderation is key. Sounds like you got it.
Your dad would disown you if you weren't a saver in some respect. You couldn't be a Ramsey.
Yeah, that's probably true. Well, because saving offers a level of peace, right? And like a level of freedom that you're like, yeah, I have options when I actually have money in the bank versus when you are living paycheck to paycheck. So for me though, I would rather outwork my spending habits than to save for things. Does that make sense? Like I would rather be like, oh no, I'll just work a little extra. I'll do a little bit more so that I can do things, but which is more of a status side. So one of the spectrums was status versus safety. And a lot of you guys were safety, which is interesting. My husband's on that, where I'm a little bit more on the status side, which sounds bad. It's not bad, but I work to spend. Like I work to go buy a great car, or I work to go on a nice vacation, where my husband's like, no, we work to have money in the bank just in case something happens.
Yeah.
Like, and again, in moderation, neither one of these are extremes, but that's kind of my mindset. So I would rather work to spend than work to save, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. Jeff,
Really
you're the
interesting.
final.
Well, speaking of unhealthy extremes, I am an extreme saver. Let me just tell you, Rachel, as I was like raising the ranks as a producer in Hollywood, I was still sleeping on a deflating air mattress in a shared room. And it wasn't until I got married that my wife, who's probably too much of a spender, was like, dude, you can't sleep on an air mattress that's deflating and then go to a job to say that you're producing a show in Hollywood. And I was like, she's right. So I have a strong saver mentality. Let me just pull it up real quick. Yeah, I'm an extreme saver with a scarcity mentality and a strong safety focused mindset.
Jeff, tell everyone where they can take this test.
Yes, and we're going to link it in the description. You can take this test below in the YouTube video or the podcast, but it's also on Rachel's website. Yeah.
Perfect. So Rachel, now you have all of our diagnoses. You know our money personalities. It seems like me, Jeff, and Kelsey are all on the same page. And then we've got our rebel, Kevin.
Well, you got, and it's so funny because working on your shit, like what you're doing, I think would lend to exactly how your results were. Like that feels very predictable, if you will. And so again, it's this level of being wise. So moderation in everything in life, I feel like I've learned over the scope of my years here on earth, is healthy, right? Like if you go extreme on anything, you just kind of get stuck in this black and white mentality. Like having a little bit of that moderation to say, okay, there is a balance. We're not going to go spend everything we make. And I made the joke about cashing out the 401k. Like we're not going to do that. That's stupid. You're not going to do that. But you're also not going to be a hoarder. and hold money so tightly that number one, you're not living life. And then number two, there's a level of unhealthy emotion with money that it becomes too much of a safety net. And I felt this. I'd be curious if you relate to this at all, because like for me on paper, my husband Winston and I, we've been married 11 years and we've been doing this stuff for 11 years. So we're in a place financially on paper that we're great. Like we're fine. Again, we've been doing it for 11 years and that's where we are. But even during the pandemic, like July, August, September, there were multiple nights I would go to bed and I'm like, are we going to be okay? Like, is stuff going to just hit the fan in this world? And like, what's going to happen? Like, there were those days that early on, especially, that we had no clue what was going to happen. And I found myself, I was like, wow, I'm allowing money to be that safety net. And that safety net was never really shaken for me until this pandemic. And it was more emotional, again, not as tactical, but man, I felt it shake for the first time. So then I think there is a level where it can be unhealthy, where you put too much of your safety and security money. Because what if it all goes away? Like, what if that happens? Who are you? You know, your identity and where you're grounded in life and your character is extremely important in this process. And I feel like we can chase after money so much and our net worth becomes our self-worth. But if that number from the bank disappears, who are you the next day? And I think those are questions we have to ask ourselves if you do lean on that safety mentality, which I realize I probably do more.
So as you said that, I thought of the person who did wake up and has nothing, a restaurant owner or, you know, a waitress. And I have the chills all the way down my body just thinking of what that feels like. So when you say you need to know who you are for that moment, how does that help that person and how do you guide them in that moment?
Yeah, I think there's a level of stability in life that you have to put your value and principles around. And whether that's a spiritual walk, whether that's family, whatever that is, it's like almost things money can't buy. And there's a level of putting investment of your time and your energy into those things in life that is really important, because like all this material stuff we have is great. And I always say, I think I said it on your last podcast probably, that it's okay to have nice stuff. Just don't let your nice stuff have you. And I think in America, our stuff just owns us. Like our value and who we are is defined by our cars, by our houses, by if our inflatable mattress has a hole or not. Like, you know what I mean? Like, man, it just defines who we are. And that's scary when all of your identity is wrapped into that stuff. And so I think you just have to check yourself. And again, I like to see what are things money can't buy, because that's the stuff that's going to outlast.
But how do you pick yourself up when you have nothing?
Yes. Well, if that's the case on a tactical level, there is a real truth that when you do have your finances in order and a strong financial foundation, that you are going to have a level of peace that is good. Like, I'm not saying, you know, obviously we teach this stuff. So I'm a firm believer in getting yourself in a place financially where you have peace. That is what I want. Because for so many people, yeah, their money controls them. So if you are that person that did wake up during the pandemic and you were furloughed, you lost your job, maybe you had your own business and it went under, to figure out, okay, what are the things I can control? And so there are industries that went completely gone. And I mean, they're still not recovered. And there's others that have elevated. And so maybe it's a career change for a short period of time, but whatever it is to bring in that income is so key, because when you can bring in that income, you can control that money. When that paycheck hits your account, you can control what's going on there. And so being wise with that, putting an emergency fund in place. So I would say save, save, save. If you still are on the cusp of like, oh, I don't know if I'm okay or not, pause everything, even retirement, I don't care, pause everything and just save cash. And then when you get to a place with a little bit more stability, then I'd say start working your way out of debt and then building up a fully funded emergency fund after that.
I love it. So let's talk a little bit about the money classrooms, because we touched on it earlier, but I'd love for you to go through the 4 money classrooms and then you can kind of figure out where we all fall into that, and we can kind of share a little bit about it, because, you know, it's that's how people kind of connect, I feel like, once they kind of hear their story, because we're all going to have a similar story at some point.
Yes. Yeah. It's fascinating. So money, again, like we said earlier, it was learned in this classroom. So money's communicated in 2 ways. It's communicated verbally, but it's also communicated emotionally. So that first money classroom is the anxious money classroom. And this is where it's verbally closed, so not talked about, and emotionally stressed. So if you grew up in an anxious money classroom, you felt tension around money, maybe at the end of the month when bills were due, and you felt it around the house, around your parents or your parent. But you didn't really know why, because it wasn't talked about. But man, you felt that tension. Classroom number 2 is the unstable money classroom. And this is where it's verbally open, but emotionally stressed. So lots of conflict, lots of fighting. Maybe you heard your parents have the same money fight over and over again. Maybe they fought with extended family members, but there was conflict. And then classroom number 3 is the unaware money classroom. And this is where it's verbally closed, but emotionally calm. So it wasn't talked about, but you never felt tension about it, right? So it was just kind of like your head was in the sand. You almost didn't even think about money until you went off on your own and you realized, oh, wow, I'm gonna have to like learn all of this because again, it was never talked about. And then classroom number 4, it's the healthiest money classroom. And this is where it's verbally open and emotionally calm. So there's a level of control over the money. There's a plan in place, but also it's talked about. It's talked about within family members. It's talked about within kids. You even have the ability, talk about it with your friends, not like, here's how much money I make, but talk about, what you're doing, maybe your goals in life, but you're comfortable talking about the subject. So that's classroom number 4. And I encourage my readers in the book to where they are presently to kind of move to that classroom number 4, start talking about money, even when it's hard, and get a plan in place so that your emotions have more peace than high intensity, if you will. So, but going back to say, okay, here's how I grew up. One of those 4 classrooms is really important because they all come with negatives. Even classroom number 4 can come with some negative things. So to be able to pinpoint it, because you'll see, and I'll be curious what you guys say, either people just mirror what they know and don't even really realize it until like, wow, that's why I do it. Or they do the extreme opposite. And they say, wow, I grew up with parents that spent all the time and now all I want to do is save. Or my mom was an extreme tightwad and all she did was save money. And now that I finally have money, I just want to spend it all. So it's interesting. You either kind of mirror it or you do the opposite.
Kev, I feel like you wanted to do the opposite.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were extreme. And, I just wanted to rebel. So every time I had money, I'm like, F that, I'm spending.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Kels?
I feel like I would probably say 4, honestly. My dad was such a tightwad and still is, and he's still but he's an incredible saver. And it was the very opposite. So my mom was like, I want to buy this next glass of wine, whatever. My dad was like, probably not. We probably shouldn't. So I think that's kind of where my tendencies come in. It's like I have the saver part of me, but then I also see my mom's point of view. So I'm like, no, I'm going to spend. I'm going to be a consumer. So, yeah.
Did y'all talk about money growing up? I'm just curious of like the tactical side of it, the emotional side.
We did. Yeah. My dad was yes and no. And I'm interested to hear what you think. Like, he was very much like he wanted us to learn the value of it. And like, he wanted us to learn stocks, and we have stock meetings, and we have this and that. Not as much emotional though, but definitely the tactical.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is, I think, probably way more common. Like if money was talked about, it probably was on that tactical side, right? Like here's what a mutual fund is. Let me show
exactly.
you. Or
here's
make
your
money
Roth.
as a little 6-year-old. Yeah. Here's what you do with it. But the emotional side's interesting. Talking about things like contentment, talking about generosity, talking about almost the bigger picture of money, that has more of that emotional wrapping versus just that tactical. But I would say the tactical, anytime it's talked about, I think is a win. So I think that's awesome that your parents dove into those conversations.
Yeah, we literally have stock meetings. But it's great.
Yeah.
It's great.
Awesome.
He and I, we used to, and my sister too, the 3 of us used to go to Charles Schwab, and it would be like Doug's outing, but
Hilarious.
yeah, right?
Yeah, I feel like we grew up, like my parents were immigrants. My dad, they were janitors. And, there were periods where because they worked so hard and they cleaned so many massive nightclubs where there was actually like a good flow of money for what that time was, because we used to collect all the cans. We would make the money off the cans. And so even though they did, hard labor, they were able to make a good living. But then when the nightclub, filed for Chapter 11 and, went down, we had some really, really hard times where we didn't even have money for food on the table until my dad was able to locate more work. And so, but I remember my dad investing and talking about investing. Mutual funds were a big thing. Mutual funds and CDs. I remember CDs, but you couldn't touch them. And I remember my dad just being such an extreme saver, always saying, we don't have any money. It was never a yes. Dad, can I? No. Dad, can I? No. So then when I turned 13, I was like, I'm starting to work because that's the only way I'm going to get anything. And first it was like, oh, I'm going to work and I'm going to buy that cute shirt at Express. And I'll never forget, it was a white ruffled bodysuit. And I bought it and it was $52 and it was friggin' like my whole check. But after that, I ended up having to kind of pitch in and help with bills and things like that. And so I just remember thinking, I need to make a lot of money because I never want to be in this situation.
So, I mean, can I add to it? Because her dad's probably one of my best friends, if not my best friend. And we work together every day. And we have a lot of fun together. But he was amazing to me because this was a guy from a village, no running water. I think a lot of first-generation kids from different cultures know a parent like this. They're very frugal with money. They work really hard, but very wise as well. I think what happened with Maria though was, and he knows when to spend money too. Like he's always like, spend money on your business, invest in yourself. Like he's.
Well, we did save money in the piggy bank, so he cut a hole in a helium tank, and we started putting any loose change in there. And when we opened it, there was $10,000.
Oh my God.
And with that money, he was like, we're going to Greece to see where we're from. He wanted to take us to Greece, and we bought a new bedroom set for each of us. And my dad got a new car.
Yeah, and he's
Oh my
amazing
gosh.
like that. And I think what happened with Maria is that when they hit the hard times, I feel like there was a little bit of trauma with Maria where it got so thin that she was like, okay, it's dog eat dog. And now I've got to work really hard and save everything. So she's more, I'll go to him. It's a little sidetrack here, but if you like Hollywood, you might like this story. I was making a feature film over 10 years ago, and I had a chance to have Christopher Lloyd in the movie. And it was a little money, but not a lot. And Maria said, no, absolutely not. And I
was in charge of the budget, Rachel, and
course.
I wanted to stay on budget. I said no to Melissa McCarthy too, by the way.
Oh no!
Asshole.
So anyway, I literally, then no to Melissa. Melissa was unknown by then,
It
but
was a second before she became
But
known.
I knew she was
Good thing
going to
you
be
could've discovered her,
huge,
yeah.
as I knew Maria was going to be huge, as I usually, that's kind of my business, I know. And Maria said no. And so, but then she said no to Christopher Lloyd, and I said, okay, that's it. And I went to her dad, again, and this is who he is. He was like, are you kidding me? He's like, and his accent's funny. He goes, even people from the church know Christopher Lloyd. Of course you got to put him in the movie. But Maria became, I think that's what happened. And so we, for me, I'm very much a believer investing in your business and investing in yourself. So all the joking aside for the spending, I believe in that wholeheartedly. And that's where we probably come to a thing. But I think that Maria, just as a party that's been with you guys for 20 years, I'm offering that to you, to Rachel.
It's
I think
terrified.
that's good. There's two things you said that I was like, yes. Number one, I think it's specifically for people that have immigrated to America. Technically, they are 12 times more likely to become millionaires than an average person just born in America, which I think is fascinating.
Wow.
Because they take this idea that, well, I can make something of myself here. And they really believe in it. They really, really believe in it. And they have a huge why. There is a big why when you come from something and you come to America and you say, because they came for some reason, right? And so they're like, okay, my why with my family, my why while we moved here, it is so big. It's so beyond me that I'm willing to do whatever it is. I'm willing to scrub toilets at a nightclub. Like, I'm willing to do what it takes. And that why is gone now. And I hate that because I'm like, no, that's one of my things with people. Like, you have to have your why. Why do you want to win with money? And it has to be bigger than yourself. And so when it's your family, there's a motivation there. So I loved hearing that. And then in the book, we talk about in the classrooms that we all have money milestones. And so there's these moments in our life that kind of put this checkpoint in our head. One of my friends, he said he went grocery shopping with his mom, and she'd always buy day-old bread because it was half off. And then he went with a friend, and the mom was pulling out all these loaves off of the grocery store shelves. And he asked her what she was doing. And she said, well, I'm looking for the freshest loaf of bread, and I'm looking at the expiration date. And he was like, oh. So then he goes back to the grocery store with his mom, and he says, Mom, look, you can find the freshest bread if you look at the expiration date. And he was like 9 years old. And she said, no. We have to get the one that's expired because it's half off. And he said, in that moment, I realized, oh, wow. Okay. There's something here. Okay. So like we all have those moments in our lives that it's like this milestone moment. And so for you had those, and it points back to a lot of what made you who you are today in such a beautiful way. So that's so cool. So
Thanks.
great.
Well, I just remember a lot of stressful times. It was awful. it was so stressful in the house, not having money and the panic and the fear and all of that. And my dad was a severe type 1 diabetic, and watching him almost die all the time. It was just like, there was a lot of fear. And so I just was like, I got to get us out of this. And so I was like laser focused. That's why I made it at 22 or whatever. Was I 23, honey, or 22? 22. 22. Yeah, 22.
It's amazing. Amazing.
Because I was like, I got to get us out of this. So, but I think, Jeff, you had a different upbringing. So I'd be curious to hear how you became an extreme saver.
It's interesting. Rachel, I'm actually like kind of Ramsey born and bred, but starting with my marriage. So up until that time, I feel like, and you think of the Ramsey demo, and like I did grow up in that Protestant home, that great Midwestern upper middle class, but our family never talked about money. And it's interesting because we've talked about our faith, our emotional wellness, doing well in school, achieving in sports, but never about money. And because I grew up in a financially stable home where we never talked about it, I know I'm in that unaware classroom. And I had to do a lot of work during college in my early 20s to learn about money, because I'm never going to say my parents didn't do an amazing job raising me, because they did. But I think if they had taken the Ramsey class, they would have raised us differently, because I knew nothing and I had to learn. I honestly don't spend because I'm afraid of money, and I've gotten better, but that is kind of embedded in me because I just don't know the rules, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. That is like, that's the classic unaware classroom, right? It was like, everything was kind of fine. It felt fine, whether it was or not, but you didn't even know because it wasn't even talked about. And so that growth of exactly what you said, going out on your own and really having to discover and unpack a lot of this, you had to do on your own, versus it being part of the environment. So
So Rachel, what does the unknown mean? Like, so, and Jeff, like when you say I was afraid of money, were you afraid of money because you didn't know where you stood with money? And then you didn't know if you could spend or anything, so you defaulted to save?
Exactly. Like for me, and again, I have to thank you and your dad, Rachel, because I wouldn't have learned any of this without Ramsey Solutions. But yeah, I just Laura has helped so much, even me grow in my career. Kevin, you talk about needing to spend to grow and spend, and I think I wouldn't have been spending anything. And when you're saving that much, you're preventing yourself from experiencing new things and achieving new things. Because again, I just didn't have the knowledge. And because I was raised in an environment where we didn't talk about it, I just didn't spend. I just, kind of just lived my life in a way that limited myself because I was actually afraid to spend.
Well, there's also, I wonder, was there at all a feeling, and I could be wrong, so tell me if I'm off base, where money's almost bad? Like if you had too much of it, you almost were categorized as like kind of evil almost, of like, oh, all those rich people, but like, oh, we're more modest and this is a better, healthier way.
I think so. Yeah. That, I'm never going to say that growing up upper middle class is a burden, right? But at the same time, when you're a church going Christian, you can learn to develop that shame around money.
Yes.
And I think that was part of maybe what I was feeling in a residual way.
Yep. Absolutely. For sure. Yeah. There's a lot of toxic money messages in different parts of life, but specifically, sadly, within the evangelical community too, which I hate, but that's a real thing.
Yeah,
Wow.
so super interesting.
That is interesting. I know Kevin at some point many years ago, let's say like 8-ish years ago, looked at me and said, you need to start spending money. Because like, I'm not kidding. I really wouldn't buy a water bottle if I was thirsty and I was out. I'm like, I'm just going to go home and get it for free. I was extreme. And he was like, if you don't start spending money and feeling your success, you're going to be miserable because now you're just a workhorse and you're not seeing the fruits of your labor. So I remember him taking me shopping and saying, you need to buy that leather jacket you want, or you need to buy that, like, whatever it is, that pair of shoes. And so, because, when you're a celebrity too, people send you stuff. And I got stuck in that rut of people sending me things and me feeling guilty that, well, they just sent me this, I should like this, but it wasn't what I wanted. It wasn't what I really liked. I just was making do. And then you just kind of, there's like, it almost like chips away little by little. You kind of like, what am I doing all this for? Why am I working so hard? And so he did change that.
So for you, I find people that tend to be extreme savers, but they start to kind of open their hand and experience life, they become even more generous. So people that are natural spenders usually yield to more generosity. Like they're just like, oh yeah, if you need help, oh yeah, here. They're natural there versus when you kind of naturally live with a closed fist. So when you started to kind of open your hand and be like, okay, no, I'm going to actually enjoy the work that I've put into my life. Did you feel any type of generosity come out of that? I'm just curious. Were you more apt to see something or hear something like, oh, that'd be cool to kind of get into and help with?
I feel like I was always actually generous in terms of like giving to, whatever, if someone was in need or something, or like gifts and stuff. Maybe I got better at it as time went on too. So maybe I got even better at it.
Or just more comfortable with money leaving. You know what I mean? I think it's that concept of just like, okay.
I was always good at like everybody else, but terrified with myself. And the only way I could give is if I didn't take myself, because then I really was giving too much. So I'd be close-fisted with myself. Like that was kind of my thing. But I think
that makes sense.
I think it is important to enjoy what you're doing and what you're making. And so like I'll give you an example. So Kevin and my dad did this renovation and we made everything like handicap accessible for my mom and all this stuff just in the nick of time, ironically. But one of the big ticket items was the master closet. Now, when we first moved into this house, we did our first master closet. We did it with IKEA and it was amazing. But now we're like looking at this and we're like, we don't know if we're going to live here. We might want to consider moving to Nashville, as I told you earlier. I don't know what's going to happen. The world is shifting and changing so much. And so we have to think about kind of resale as well. And I was like, Kevin, I think we need to do like a real custom made closet. If a girl comes into this house, she wants to see the dream closet. That's what this house kind of dictates. Yep. And so I went to California Closets.
Yes, you did.
Designed my kind of dream closet. It's literally, they're in my driveway right now, starting the install.
Oh, right.
And ironically, Kevin was laughing. He goes, of course, this is the most expensive thing we've done. Like we did this whole renovation for like peanuts. And this is the one thing. And he's like throwing up in his mouth. And so was I. But
so this is where our relationship's weird, because I was like, I can do this for 1/10 of the budget, and only 5% of the people out there are going to know the difference between what I do and what I
Not true. When you see the California closet, boo, you're going to know the difference.
Really, like after everything I've just pulled off in this house,
honey,
you really think?
Honey, just trust me.
I'm telling you, public.
The textures,
you can go to IKEA and you find a way to zhuzh it. Plenty of YouTube videos. Never mind. But anyway, you see the difference in our like where I am a spender, but I'm like, no, why spend there? I can do it and for 1/10 of the budget. Anyway, so this is why we're messed up.
Because in the money tendencies that I talk about, one of the things is spending on experiences versus things. Yeah. And so I would be curious if like either one of you guys being opposites, do you tend to put more value? Like I would rather spend money on a thing that I can reuse over and over again versus an experience, a nice dinner out or a vacation that's just, it's gone. You have memories, but it's gone.
I'm experiences.
And I'm things, and that's why the closet ultimately is a great idea because we're going to use it every day. We're going to enjoy it every day. And yes. So I'm like, hot tub, if you're going to use it every day, if it's going to make you stronger, feel better, you do it. You spend, invest on yourself. Yeah, that's where definitely I'm the things and she's experience.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, because I definitely took it up a notch on the vacations, and now you can't go down a notch once you've gone up.
Oh, it's so true. I say I'm an accommodation snob now. I'm like, dang it. Bad. Once you stay at a good hotel, I'm like, I can't go back. I just can't go back. I'll rent like a small compact car to get to the nice hotel. Like there's like little things. I'm like, I will cheap out on some things. Not the accommodation. So I'm with you, Maria, for sure.
So now let's talk a little bit about how we kind of take where we grew up in our money classroom and how do we kind of push ourselves forward into kind of achieving our dreams, because that's what the book is about.
For sure. Well, if you grew up in an anxious money classroom, you're going to have a natural tendency to back away from conflict. You're going to have a natural tendency to just really not engage because it almost feels better to be like, yeah, I feel tension, but like, I don't even want to know the truth. Like there's this like level that you feel, this wall you have to break down. So if you grew up in that classroom, I would encourage you that you really do. You have, for the verbal side of money, talking about money, that might be your biggest blocker. So learning how to communicate in your close relationships about money. If you grew up in the unstable money classroom, you know how to communicate probably because you heard it, whether it was healthy or not, but it was talked about. But to say, okay, how do I take that stress that I was feeling there and actually learn to control my money so that emotional stress goes down? And again, working with someone, whether it's a spouse or a good friend, but to really get you there. And then I would say that classroom number 3, like we talked about earlier, but it's gaining that knowledge. And a lot of people that grew up in this classroom, I find that if they married someone that was good with money, again, they kind of just were like, they can take care of it. Like they almost labeled the spouse the money person because it just kind of felt good to have your head in the sand and not have to worry, where you have to engage. You have to learn, you have to communicate, you have to engage. And then that classroom number 4, there was someone that grew up in classroom number 4. Who was it on your show? They just said it.
It was Kelsey.
Kelsey. Okay, yes.
Hey.
Kelsey, yes. So I grew up in classroom number 4 too. And I would say though, one of our things that we have to learn is that just because your parents were money smart doesn't mean you automatically get that gene. Like you have to put in the work, and there's a level of entitlement that can come with that classroom of like, oh no, everything was controlled and great. And sometimes I heard the word no, it wasn't like you were given everything. But it was all fine. And you kind of expect that into adulthood. And I love the quote, I can't remember who said it, Larry Burkett or someone, that we spend the first 5 to 7 years of our marriage trying to obtain the same standard of living as our parents. But it took our parents 30 years to get there. And so that classroom number 4, we can fall into that. And so you have to break through, say, I am an independent person. Like once I'm out on my own, I'm the one that has to develop these skills that I've learned in my household, which I'm thankful for, but I actually have to put it into practice.
Yeah, I think that I think you said something that's interesting is like when people put it on the spouse, everyone's like, oh, he handles the money. And I think it's like a lot of women obviously do it too. And it's something that now that
some men do it too, Maria.
This is true, honey. Yeah, he does. He's like, she handles all the money. But I am the right one to handle the money.
You are. 100%.
She gets the good closets. Don't worry.
But
I know how to make it, and Maria knows how to save it.
I know how to make it and save it, baby. But I think it's really important.
Really, 10 years ago when we tried to launch this show, do we really want to go down that path?
Honey, I'm just saying the facts. I know how to make money and I know how to save money. Do you dispute that?
Yes, I dispute the first part of it.
I don't know how to make money?
I think when you have the money, you mean how to invest it?
No, I know how to make money. I earn a living.
Okay. And do we really want to go over with Rachel all the jobs you said no to that I had to like put on my hands and knees and beg you to do that ended up making you money?
Okay.
Must we do that?
Let's move on.
I don't think your fans want to go over that list.
Let's move on. Although it would be an interesting show. I think that it's really important to be educated yourself in how to be financially independent and what moves people are making and why. Like whenever I tell Kevin what we're doing, I explain it thoroughly so he understands. But I think it's a lot easier to learn than you think, and you will feel so empowered, and it's just so important. I wonder, what advice do you have for people in 2021 in terms of investing, where the markets at the end of 2020, I mean,
Insane. Yeah.
am in absolute shock because I didn't see it going that way. Mm-hmm. And maybe it's a delayed reaction that's going to come in 2021. I sure hope not, but it almost feels like the housing bubble happened and there is going to be a burst. I thought the burst was going to be in the fall of 2020. Am I crazy? Did you feel the same?
No. Well, do you remember and I wish Heidi might be able to tell me, what month was I on the show with you?
Was it
Because it was
July?
during
April.
It was April?
April. Yep.
April. Okay. It was the very beginning.
Yeah.
And I do remember talking to you because after I got done with the recording, I thought, oh gosh, I may have been so wrong. Because we talked about 2008 versus what was going on during the pandemic. Do you remember that? And I said, I was like, I don't see it going like 2008. I think we're going to be better off. I think we're going to be okay. And you're like, no. And I was
Yeah.
like, I don't know. So what's crazy is the unemployment and stuff has not really recovered because those industries where that unemployment happens, they're not back. Like, I mean, Delta, I think they said is actually going to make money or something. I heard that on the news today, but they're barely coming back. But the markets is usually a predictor of the future. It's like you said, went crazy. Like in December, I was like, what is happening? So So yeah, so who knows what's going to happen? Thankfully, that is good. And that piece of advice we talked about on your show in April, I kept saying, like, don't cash out of the market. Don't cash out. Stay in, stay in, stay in, stay in, stay in. And so that is one thing that we learned is that, yes, you have to ride that roller coaster, because for investing, it should be long term. It should be 5 years or more. And your retirement, if it's Roth IRA or 401k, it's for the long term, depending on your age. And so you let it ride it out, because if you look at every little dip, you're going to freak yourself out and you're going to pull that money, and then you're going to take those penalties and everything. And so writing it out is so key. So I think we talked about a little bit of that on your last show, but that would still be the same piece of advice I'd have today. And thankfully it's recovered and more. I mean, if you pulled out, you missed all that growth. Yeah.
It's crazy. So if you pulled out or if you haven't gone in, what is your advice now?
Yeah, I always have a little bit of different financial advice than some people. So I always say, specifically with real estate and investing, it's not market timing, it's your timing. So I want you out of debt. I want you to have a fully funded emergency fund of cash of 3 to 6 months of expenses. Once you have all of that, whether the market's good or bad, start investing 15% of your income into retirement. Start investing. That's when you want to look at getting in at that point. So it's less about what the market's doing. It really is more about where you are financially, because the hard thing is, if you had a 401k, but you had no cash in the bank, 40% of Americans couldn't cover a $400 emergency in cash during the pandemic. So if you were one of the millions that was furloughed or laid off, that 401k doesn't do much for you. You do have to cash it out to avoid bankruptcy or foreclosure. And I don't want you to get to that point at all. So having cash and no debt is a great place to be.
I love it. Any last questions, guys?
The last thing I love, Rachel, is you talk in the book about faith over fear. And actually, that's a big recurring theme on our show is, we have a lot of listeners from different faiths, but I know your faith is important to you. But can you talk about why fear is such a dangerous ingredient in our money journey and how we can find faith in ourselves or in whatever our higher power is to be smart and kind of hone our money personality, if you will?
Yes. Yeah. Fear was really interesting for me because I really dove into this subject because fear dictates and motivates us a lot with what we do with our money. And Dr. Chip Dodd said to me on the phone during our interview, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's so good. He said, fear is actually a gift. So fear is your body's literal response that you are in need of something. Now, when that fear goes to the extreme or it goes into anxiety and it paralyzes you, that's unhealthy. I don't want that for you. But if you had a financial fear kind of rise up, specifically during 2020, listen to that. What was that telling you? So if it was the fear of the lack of security, like we just talked about, okay, if that's your fear because it's your reality, let's do something about it. Let's get out of debt and get that emergency fund. If your fear is that, I don't want to end up like my parents, okay, let's put some things in place where that's not going to happen. So listening to that fear, not letting it paralyze you. It doesn't need to control you by any means. But when that fear rises up, being able to name it and say, okay, what can I do? And having faith in yourself, absolutely. So whether it's a big faith or you, I think you need all of it because you have the ability to change your life. Like that's the beautiful thing I love about personal finance. It's like you get to wake up tomorrow and there are things we can't control in our life that we've all experienced, but there are things we can control. And so it's to say, okay, what can you control and focusing on that and kind of giving the power back to yourself in a way to say, I have the ability to change, right? Like if you want to get healthier, we know you got to eat less and exercise more. Doing it is hard. So that's a whole other conversation, actually putting it in place, but we know what to do. And so these principles we've talked about of living on a budget, getting an emergency fund, getting out of debt, getting yourself stable, we know we can do that. We can do that. But actually doing the action is what's so difficult. But believing I can, because in order to do those things, you have to sacrifice, right? You're not going to just get out of debt just overnight. You're not going to just save up 3 months of expenses overnight. You have to sacrifice your lifestyle. Like there's elements and short-term sacrifice that go into play, but you have to have hope that what you're sacrificing for is so much better than your present. And I don't think pain has to be your only teacher, but it is a thorough teacher. So if you had these moments in 2020 and you're like, never again, let that be a stake in the ground and you have the ability to do it because you have hope that what you're sacrificing for is so much better than the stress and anxiety you have with money today.
So good. I love that.
Rachel, do you have, with it being a new year, is there any quick steps somebody can take right now? I think this is the time of year we always say, I'm going to lose weight, I'm going to do this. And I feel like financial stability really, I'm old fashioned in that way as much as I'm talking about spending. I feel like at your core, it just helps provide so much peace and relief from anxiety and so many other things. So like, is there just a couple of quick steps you could give us that where it's like we're just these next week we can just start to implement maybe, and some of our fans can implement as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say number one, start with a budget. It's the biggest mistake people make. They don't live intentionally with their income. They kind of just spend it with whatever. So being intentional. So a monthly budget is simply your income for the month minus all of your expenses, including giving and saving, but it all equals zero. So every dollar coming in from your paycheck is assigned to a category. And it's going to take you 3 months to get it right. So January may be a disaster. February is going to be a little tough, but by March, you're going to start to see consistency. So that budget, make a budget tonight. Get out a sheet of paper, get Excel out. I don't care. Just get that, figure out, okay, my income in January is probably going to be this, minus here's what we usually spend. Go back and look at December or November or October of 2020 and see what you spent on out to eat, see what you spent on groceries, kind of look at your lifestyle. And then you probably have to cut from there in order to fit that in to your number, to your income. But starting that out, gosh, the budget would be my number one. And then number two, within that budget, to start to save. Again, majority of people can't even cover a $400 emergency. So get $1,000. Let that be your goal. And open up a savings account that's separate from checking, just a standard savings account, and just start just putting a little bit of money in. Because once you see that you can actually do it, again, that's where the hope ignites. Because if you're not saving, you feel like you'll never get there. But even if you just put a little bit away and you're like, oh, wow, there's $300 in there or whatever it is, you actually feel like, okay, I can do this. I can do this. So that's what I would say. I would say definitely be budgeting and start practicing saving if you're not in that habit, because a lot of Americans aren't.
And I think you're right. The emotions build because when you have that savings account, you start feeling better about yourself, and you probably want to do more.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And do you believe in a financial journal? I remember Maria used to do a food journal when she was losing weight. What do you think about a financial journal where you write down literally everything you buy, from gas to gum to anything, when you're putting together this budget?
Yeah, I think that's a great way, because you want to be able to track expenses. So I use an app, EveryDollar, and it's attached to my bank account. So anytime I swipe my debit card, my transactions just go right in, so I can drag and drop it. Ooh. So however you can do that, but you want to track your expenses, because to your point exactly, you can create a budget and then be like, okay, there it is. But you actually have to live on it. So you do have to track with what's going on. So whether that is, journaling or keeping receipts, or you get an app that helps you do it, in a technology way, it doesn't matter. But to keeping track, yes, 100%, you have to be able to do that to know where you're at. And that gives you accountability too, right? Like you get toward the end of January and you say, okay, we only have X amount left in our restaurant category. We may, depending on how much is in there, we're gonna have to choose. So it just allows you to have limits and boundaries with your money, which is so, so important.
Yeah, and you don't know what you're spending, because you're doing it so quickly. Because now it's not even just cash. It's your apps, it's your Apple Pay, your Amazon, whatever. And it's back to the diet thing, Kev, you said. In my first book, The Evergirl's Guide to Life, and the second one, The Evergirl's Guide to Diet and Fitness, I talked about how I lost weight. And it was in January years ago. I wrote down everything I ate for a week, down to the stick of gum. And then I was able to identify where my problem areas were. And then I was able to attack those problem areas. And then by the end of the year, I lost 40 pounds. But I was intentional about how I did it and thoughtful. And it's the same thing with money. If you know you're spending all your money going to 7-Eleven, buying little junky things, then you can say, all right, it's going to be cheaper for me to, buy the snacks at the store, at the supermarket, and, bagging them up, or I don't know. You can kind of look at your problem areas better.
Absolutely, for sure. Yeah. And when you see how much you spend on food, it's like, oof. It's a lot if you're not keeping track. And so, yeah, even that, simply just even where you grocery shop, right? Like making these little changes is going to be huge over time. You're exactly right.
Yeah. So the app is called EveryDollar that you like?
EveryDollar, yes. So there's a free version and then a paid version. But I love it because, all my transactions come in. And you'd be so proud. I'm a spender. But when those come in, I'm like, oh, I'm going to know exactly where I'm at. And I just drag and drop those transactions. And it's great.
Rachel, have you ever used Mint?
Yes, I have.
Is it similar?
Yeah, I do like Mint for the overall picture. They do a good job, because you can put in your worth of, your car and your house. It gives you a really big picture. But I like EveryDollar on the day-to-day because it's a better transaction to keep that monthly budget.
No, I'm glad you brought that up, because Mint is another fun app that I used to use, but it was overwhelming because it didn't track the day-to-day.
Yes. Yeah. It's a good picture to see your whole financial life, if you will. But I like EveryDollar for the monthly budget.
Awesome.
I love it. Well, Rachel, I bet if they go to rachelcruz.com, not only can they take the quiz there, but I bet You can also get kind of on track. You can buy the book, which comes out today. It's called why am I blanking on the name of the book?
Know Yourself, Know Your Money.
I'm like, wait, why am I blanking? Know Yourself, Know Your Money. But also I'm sure, they can sign up for more classes and such to kind of get themselves on track, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yep. All resources are there for sure. And you can buy the book anywhere books are sold.
Thank you, Jeff, because I left mine in my foyer as I was running out. I used the restroom and then I forgot it. But
No worries.
But Know Yourself, Know Your Money. Rachel Cruz, thank you so much as always.
Oh, thank you, Maria. Thanks for having me on. It's always so fun. I appreciate it. If you come to Nashville, we'll have a glass of wine. It'll be fantastic.
Sure. For sure. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
guys.
Thank you,
I
Rachel.
appreciate it.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thanks.
That was so fun.
So great. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for helping me
Of course.
push it out to the world. I really
Yeah,
appreciate
of course. It's amazing and you're great. And I'm definitely going to hit you up when I come to Nashville because we're going to be coming out soon to check it out, I think.
Oh, dear. There's some fun places. Not maybe as great as LA, the food scene, but it's a pretty good food scene.
You know
Us
what?
is pretty
We
good,
don't do
Rachel.
the food
Yeah, there's good.
scene here. We just kind of live in our little like hole here. And
What
that's
part of California are you all?
Encino.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like I don't feel safe venturing out. Like I want to feel safe.
Yeah, come to Nashville. There's bachelorette parties everywhere, though, because of it. So just prepare your heart.
Ooh.
Well,
fun.
we're gonna have kids this year. We're like, where do we want to raise a family? And it's not necessarily here. I don't know when it'll be, but I think
Yeah.
I think we're gonna end up doing it. We'll see.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah,
So I'll let you
They're-
know.
They're a blessing and a curse all at the same time. I can tell you that. But
Oh
they're fun.
my god, hilarious. All right, cool. Well, have a great day. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks,
Thank
you
Bye,
guys.
you.
Rachel. Thank you. Look forward to
Bye,
meeting
y'all.
you.
All right. Well, that was amazing and fun.
So fun.
Fun getting to know you guys on a financial level.
I know.
Clearly,
It's
I know
fun
my
for
husband.
me.
Once
It's
again,
one of
the
the privileges
Myers.
of
Good
my-
job.
The Myers, I know. I honestly got to give that to my dad. Like but both of them, because I think I have a healthy balance because of the two of them, to be honest. Because my dad is a little bit too stingy, but he's incredible with money. And actually, so is my mom. So good job,
I
Myers.
love it.
It
Well,
was
that was
really
a great interview,
interesting.
Maria. You guys always really click, and it's fun for me. I was saying on the show that Dave Ramsey and Rachel Cruz have been a really important building block for Laura's and my marriage. So, kind of for you, Maria, you get to bring on all these experts that have helped you so much. I was so excited to bring Rachel on because she's helped me a ton. So I really encourage you guys to check out the book, check out Ramsey Solutions, especially if you're feeling fear or shame around money. I get it. But in order to conquer that fear, you just have to get into it. So if you're one of those listeners who's like panicking when you listen to this stuff, like she said, tonight, get into your budget. They're just numbers, right? Money's not emotional. We make it emotional. So get in there, look at your income, look at what you're spending, and starting today, you can turn it around if you do that.
Very true. All right,
and
guys.
I think it's easier than weight loss. I feel like there's
Yeah.
more willpower involved with that than what she's asking, and
Because money isn't delicious.
it's not. But I think you're right, Jeff.
I beg to differ.
Fear,
I
but
love
fear
money.
is so crippling, and I see people just buckle, and they sit and they live in that fear, and it's just life just gets worse. Your anxiety gets worse. You got to step and lean into it, and you're right, Jeff. Like that, I think, and she's right with her, 2 quick steps to apply. And I love that app. I can't wait to check it out.
Yep.
Every dollar.
All right, guys, that is it for us today. If you haven't joined us on Patreon, please do. Our workshops are about to resume. You can click the link tree on my Instagram or on Better Together with Maria. Tomorrow, we are back with human optimization expert and On It founder Aubrey Marcus to talk about how to start our 2021 with focus, fitness, and holistic living. He's a great, great interview, so you guys are going to really enjoy him. In the meantime, follow us at Better Together with Maria, at Rachel Cruz, at Jeffrey Crane Graham, at Kels Meyer too. Shout out
Hey,
to
listen,
Ad Undergaro.
listen. Is Rachel off the phone, guys?
Yeah.
She's
Oh,
off.
great. Okay. There's this 1977 Cadillac, you guys. I need this thing. I was telling Maria, this family has lost its way when it comes to class. I'm going to bring class back to this family. Jeff, I said, Maria, you're looking at this thing. Come on, you're getting excited. I said, come on, you're looking at this. You see me driving this, and all of a sudden, you're going to want to rip my clothes off.
Somebody save me.
Come on.
Be nice
gonna
to
go look-
people. Make good choices and be present.
And buy
Shut
old Cadillacs.
the